feels weird to hit the biggest game on the system so early in the project. But I guess that's what happens when a system's library is so limited. As a sequel, Super Mario Bros. 2 was out remarkably fast. It's now 8.5 months after the release of the original Super Mario Bros. And while 8-bit games definitely had fast development cycles, especially in the mid-80s, that is still absurdly fast. Nintendo as a company would have barely had any time to register any fan reactions to the first game before they started cranking this one out. The plot of the game is exactly the same as the first, and I do mean that quite literally. The manuals page for the story, and most of the rest of the instructions, is identical to the original Super Mario Bros. There is a letter from Mario's staff, that's how it's signed, that thanks you for buying the game and tells you that this is a parallel story. So it's a non-canon multiverse thing. So what did Nintendo have time to change to Super Mario Bros. For Super Mario Bros. 2? And the answer is a whole lot, and also very little. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit changes. Things that would be trivially easy to implement. But very few significant changes. The real attraction for Super Mario Bros. 2 is having a whole new set of Mario levels. That's the actual draw here. The most visible change in Super Mario Bros. 2 is the graphics. I mean, that's kind of by definition the most visible. The ground has been redrawn to make it look more irregular, and things like the clouds and mushrooms have been given little cartoon eyes. It is a better looking game. It's also a better sounding game. There's a few additional tweaks to the audio, particularly the squeak when you try to turn suddenly. That just leans more into the cartoony aspects of the character. There aren't a lot of new gameplay elements. There's the poison mushroom that will hurt you instead of making you grow, and on some later stages there's wind that will blow you around. One big mechanical addition is that you now bounce pretty high off of enemies, something that the game actually requires that you do at some points. The biggest gameplay addition is that the 2-player mode has been removed, and instead there's an option for a Luigi game, which would be playing as Luigi. Luigi's a harder character to use than Mario. He has a lot of inertia to him, slow to get moving, slow to stop, and even slow in his jump. But he can jump significantly higher than Mario. And there are several points in the game that are specifically set up to take advantage of Luigi's extra jump height. Most of my recording time I was playing as Luigi, mainly so I'd have the different movement on display. And that brings me to the stages. On the cover of Super Mario Bros. 2, there's a little seal that says, "For Super Players." It marks Super Mario Bros. 2 as something more like Championship Load Runner than an actual sequel. A set of super hard challenge levels, specifically for people who have mastered the original game. And therein lies the main problem with Super Mario Bros. 2. This isn't a game for super players. It's a game for masochists. The level design is explicitly cruel. Not simply difficult, it's actively mean-spirited. You might have seen discussion of a philosophy of level design, where the creator makes a particular challenge for the player and then iterates on it, adding additional complications and ending with some form of skill test to see if the player mastered it. Nintendo themselves canonized this approach in the lessons they provide in the Super Mario Maker games. Well, this is 1986, and people aren't putting that much philosophy into level design yet. Super Mario Bros. 2 follows an earlier design philosophy, one that is a lot less pleasant and a lot less fun. The levels here are based on the principle of, aha, gotcha! The idea that the designer should be tricking the player, punishing them for falling into traps that they couldn't possibly have foreseen. It throws new challenges at the player in a way that forces them to succeed on their first attempt or die instantly. There's nothing in the level design that couldn't have been done in the original Super Mario Bros. It's just that it really wouldn't have been a good idea to do that. You've got situations in Super Mario Bros. 2 where you could go down a pipe into a coin collection area and find yourself trapped in a warp zone back to World 1. or you can discover hidden areas that take you back to earlier points in the stage. Extra lives and power-ups are exceedingly rare here. Even coins are hard to come by, which actually makes going back to an earlier point in the stage kind of helpful, since you can collect those coins over and over again. At least they give you infinite continues, and added the continue option to the game over screen, but you'll still have a tough time getting through a world with only 3 lives. On the other hand, they also gave you the perfect setup to collect infinite lives at the very start of the game. This box is the first thing that you'll encounter, and it has the mushroom hidden in it, which you'll have to bop out of the box if you want to collect it. But then if you're careful, you can set it up so the turtle is trapped on one square, and then with a perfect jump, you bop them over and over again collecting lives. I actually found it easier to do this in Super Mario Bros. 2 than the original game, because here the ceiling helps line you up perfectly. Just remember that Super Mario Bros. 2, like its predecessor, stores your life count in a signed 8-bit integer. So once you hit 128, it goes to negative 127. Super Mario Bros. 2 takes advantage of the fact that it's on the disk system. If you complete the game without using any warp zones, then it saves that information to the disk, and it adds a star to the title screen. If you do this 8 times, when you complete the game, you're taken to a new world, World A. And there are 4 additional extra hard worlds to complete. They only give you 1 life at the outset of this. And there are no continues in Worlds A through D. You've got 1 shot against the cruelest level design implemented in any Mario game. Make it count. Needless to say, Super Mario Bros. 2, as the sequel to Super Mario Bros., was extremely successful. Over 2.5 million copies sold, making it by far the best-selling Famicom Disk System game. However, the bloom came off this rose awfully fast. Even in Japan, it's remembered as the Mario game that you don't want to play. And naturally, that led to Nintendo making a different game, Super Mario Bros. 2, for international markets. Of course, since it is a canonical Super Mario Bros. Game, or a parallel universe Super Mario Bros. Game, Super Mario Bros. 2 has turned up a lot over the years. Maybe the most notable was in the Super Mario Collection for the Super Famicom, where it got a graphics overhaul. But it was also integrated into Super Mario Bros. Deluxe for the Game Boy Color, and stages from it were absorbed into the Super Mario Bros. Arcade game, which was the first way that people outside of Japan would have encountered some of these things. My feeling on Super Mario Bros. 2 is that it's inessential. If this had been released as Super Mario Bros. 1, people would still remember it as a good game, but it probably wouldn't have turned Nintendo into the cultural powerhouse that they became. As you might be able to tell from my title screen, I've never managed to beat this once. And every couple of years I'll give it another shot, but that hostile level design just wears me down. If this Mario game wasn't around, nobody would miss it.